Hi, everyone. We're from Hollywood. We have to do a little sizzle, especially since this is late on a Friday afternoon. So I'm Alden Stoner. I'm the Vice President of Social Action for Film Campaigns at Participant Media. And we are a company that's been around for about 10 years, making movies and entertainment that inspires and compels social change. And actually, starting next week, on August 1st, we're launching our very first television network called Pivot. And it's actually targeted at all of you, the next greatest generation. You guys are the ones who are making the real change in the world. And we are going to help you through that through creating entertainment that inspires and hopefully helps you to continue your individual and collective missions. And I'm here today to talk a little bit about leading through storytelling. It's a subject that is near and dear to my heart. I've committed my career to two things: the pursuit of story and the study of leadership. And so it's a thrill to be here among all these amazing leaders. I've had some opportunity to talk to some of you, and you guys are really at the forefront doing what is truly important work. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of storytelling, and Seth did a great job sort of teeing me up about storytelling and why it's important. A little bit about the history of it, some of the work that we've done at Participant Media, and some of the social action campaigns that we've created around our films. Because for every piece of content, whether it's a film, TV show, editorial piece on takepart.com, we create a social action around it, because we believe that content is an amazing way to inspire people to then take that next step, to really change the world one step at a time. And then I'll end a little bit on why this matters to you, how it affects your world, and hopefully some take-homes. This is an important subject for me because my life was changed by a film. I actually saw a movie called Dead Poets Society. Have any of you seen it? So I saw that movie when I was 12 years old, and I decided I could be a teacher, but what I really wanted to do was inspire people in that way. I was truly moved by that film, because it's really the story about a teacher who teaches a young group of boys to think for themselves, to think beyond what they originally dreamed to be possible into something even greater. And that's the greatest thing, is to be able to share stories with people to really help them reach beyond their potential. And so that's why I've dedicated my life to movie making and being in and around films and storytelling. And so before I go on, I want to ask, how many of you have seen our movie Lincoln? Raise your hands. Oh, great, about 2/3 of you. Fantastic. Keep going to the theaters. So Lincoln is a great film for two reasons. One, it's directed by Steven Spielberg, and he brilliantly brings together an amazing story about an incredibly important time in our history. And the second is, it actually features one of the best leaders who tells stories. So Lincoln is known, very well known, for his ability to distill very complex issues into stories. And when the world's gray, right? There's so many issues that you guys deal with on an everyday basis that are nuanced, that are complicated, and that's gray. And he was dealing with one of the most divisive issues of our history. But what he was able to do, and it's documented in the film, but it also is well documented elsewhere, he was able to bring stories and distill this major issue into ways that people could relate to it. Because when you connect to people and on their humanity level, you are able to change their framework, to change their hearts and minds. And when you are able to do that, anything is possible. But storytelling is not new to Lincoln. It goes well beyond. It's an ancient thing, goes back to the very beginnings of humanity, where people painted things on cave walls and talked about how communities came together and the latest hunt and all of that. Storytelling evolved a little bit over the centuries, and to the time of Homer, and when people would gather around the campfire and listen to poets talk for hours in poetry about Odysseus and his travels around the world. And why does this matter? Well, Seth talked about this, community. It creates this sense of community. And when people were listening to the tales of Odysseus, they were listening to the fact that he was going off to an adventure, and maybe the young men and women in the crowd said, oh, I want to do that too. Or they related to when Odysseus came back from his travels, and the only one who recognized him was his blind dog after the years, and that sense of home. But the idea is that these stories connect us on a very human, basic level. And the flickering of that campfire lives on today, only it lives on in theaters and on computer screens. When you're in a movie like Wolverine this afternoon, seems to be a popular one, people are cheering, you're laughing, you're crying, you're cheering. This is what brings us together. And when one person does something, that's great. But when a whole community of people do something, that's real change. And if it's online, that also is creating a community as well, right? It's just through online dialogues and people going back and forth. And we have seen time and time again with some of our content, whether it be our films or our content around the content, people having incredible online dialogues and the change that that can create as well. So as I mentioned, we've been around about 10 years. We've done over 42 films, and so we have a little bit of experience with something like this. And so I'm just going to give you 3 examples of some of our social action campaigns and how we've really seen storytelling make meaningful, lasting change. And hopefully you can pull some of these ideas for yourself. So the first example I'm going to give is Food Inc. How many of you have seen Food Inc? Awesome. You guys are a good audience. So Food Inc. is a film, it's a documentary that, for those of you who don't know, that really lifts the veil on the food industry and the agriculture industry and what it is we eat and how it is that all comes together. And what was so extraordinary about that film is that we did a huge poll afterwards, about 35,000 people, so a pretty significant poll, and over 50% of the people who saw that film said, this movie changed my life, and that they made a change, a meaningful change, lasting change in their lives. And for many people, it was deciding to buy organic. I can tell you that's exactly what I did. And so if one person buys organic, that's great. 10 people, good. 100, 100,000, a million, it goes on. Then you start to build a movement. And you do that, and we were a part of that because of the stories that it told. It put a face on some of the issues that are in and around that particular arena. And so when we think of that work and the fact that it has changed so much, there have been policy changes that have been made by organizations such as Walmart and Whole Foods. Now, did our movie create those? No. But were they a part of the movement that made those possible? Yes. And so I want to then give you sort of another example of another food movie. Actually, we just launched a movie in March called A Place at the Table. It's a hunger documentary about the nearly 50 million Americans who don't know where their next meal is coming from. 50 million. What does that number mean? Does that mean anything to you? Maybe, maybe not. It's hard to know exactly how to contextualize that. But when you meet the people in the film, you start to think a little bit differently about it. And part of what we saw was that so many people thought of food stamps in a certain way and had all these issues about it and really misconceptions about it. People think it creates dependency and people are on it for a really long time and they don't work and all of that, none of which are true. Fraud is at less than 2%. People work, 40% of people on food stamps work. And on average, people are on it 8 to 10 months. But again, those are facts and figures. What do you care, right? Well, so what we did was we created a program called the SNAP Alumni Project. We put a face to the 50 million Americans who are hungry or were once hungry. And these are people, this project features people who were once on food stamps but are no longer. They are contributing members to society, they have jobs, they are doing extraordinary things, and they needed food stamps as a bridge. And when we took some of these extraordinary people, a computer scientist, a professor, a teacher, a tax attorney, when we took them to Capitol Hill and we had them share their stories and we put the human face on this issue, hearts and minds of members of Congress were changed. We know that. And so when you can contextualize these very complicated issues, we've got a food system problem, we've got a minimum wage problem, all of these issues that are contributing to hunger that seem so big and complex, but if you can actually put some kind of tangible story around it, people will relate to that. People don't want their kids to go hungry. People don't want their neighbor to go hungry. And so when you can put that face on it, you can make a real change. The third example I'll give you is with a film we did called Snitch. There was a bit of a clip in there from the sizzle. Snitch came out in February, and it was starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. It was a big action movie. It was a great popcorn movie. And it really is about a father and son, and a father who would do anything for his son, who happened to make a really bad choice. And he was caught with drugs. And he was sentenced to 10 years in prison because of the minimum sentencing laws. And so part of what we do at Participant is we look at what are the issues in and around these films. How can we really make a change and find a tipping point that is able to be tipped over the edge, right? And how can we as a media company bring more of the assets that we have to change the conversation? Well, in part of our research, there's the mandatory minimum laws that we got involved with, but we also did some discovery and found out there's this major issue with sentencing kids, people under 18, to life in prison without parole. So a 14-year-old or a 15-year-old or a 16-year-old could be even part of a crime, so not the actual criminal, and could go to jail for the rest of their life without ever having an opportunity to redeem themselves. Some people say that's fair, maybe, maybe not. But the opportunity to change, to have a chance to change, on some level, isn't that the American way? So we did some research, and we talked to the Campaign for Fair Sentencing for Youth. And one of the things that they were struggling with is, how do we make this a relatable issue? Nobody really wants to talk about criminals and talk about how somebody might need a chance for change, right? Well, what we did is we collaborated with them and created a series of 3 videos featuring people who were criminals, went to jail, served their time, and came out and became amazing members of society. They contributed in huge, huge ways. And one of the people featured was a guy named Xavier. And in this video, Xavier shares his story. He tells about the crime that he was a part of, tells about his guilt, his incredible remorse, the work that he decided while he was in prison to change himself and to help be a contributing member of society. And he has since been released, has a family, is helping people, young adults like himself years ago, stay on the straight and narrow, make better choices. He works at a community center. And that's an amazing video that we ended up putting at the beginning of our Snitch DVD. Snitch DVD just came out a couple weeks ago. And within 24 hours of the Snitch DVD releasing, it comes out on Tuesday. For those of you who don't know, DVDs always come out on Tuesdays. So somebody had to go out, go to Best Buy, buy the Snitch DVD, watch the Snitch DVD, and then call the Campaign for Fair Sentencing for Youth, and they were flooded with phone calls. And they have been ever since. Because they watched Xavier's video and they said, oh my God, I had no idea this was going on. I had no idea this was a problem, and I want to help. This is an issue that was not getting very much attention, but through story, both through the film, but also through just the video, which was also online and in a number of other places and forums, it was making meaningful change, and these people are now getting involved in this issue. So these are just 3 examples of many that we have where we've tried to put a human face on it or tried to incorporate this idea of storytelling to make meaningful change. And you guys are doing change every day. You're making broad-based, major policy decisions. You're changing all of our lives, whether we know it or not. And sometimes you need to just get your boss on board with an idea. Sometimes you need to get all of your colleagues on board. And sometimes you need to get the American public on board. And so I say to you, go forth, be leaders, be storytellers, and know that a story well told truly can change the world. Thank you.